This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Adam Lang.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, Adam, of course, our weekend show is very different to our weekday shows. So the whole setup of this is that we are looking for the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. We are each going to nominate one for those categories. We can't obviously pick a winner between us because you would pick yours, I would pick mine, and I suspect we would never agree. So we are joined by an adjudicator. Sean Almer, of course, is away. He's almost back from his US holidays, so everything will be back to normal next week. But for one more time, it is you and me, Adam, head-to-head, and our good friend Tim Burrows, media commentator, the founder of Mumbrella, now the managing partner of the newsletter Unmade. I say good friend because after last week's result, Tim, I consider us to be firm friends when you ruled in favour of me. Good morning.
Well, it was all legit and above board. Good morning to you. And it is exciting to just for one more time step into Sean's, I don't know, tasseled loafers. That's how I sort of visualize him, I suppose.
Tasseled loafers is an interesting image because usually it's Adam that cops a bit of a gentle ribbing for his shoes and his choice of indoor runners and his pristine white runners that he only wears indoors. Are you wearing them right now, Adam?
In fact, I am, Michael. Let's hope they're lucky.
Okay, all is right with the world in that case, and we can jump straight into it. The biggest story of the week. I tell you what, there's been so much happening this week that we have been really kind of spoiled for choice. You go first on the biggest story of the week, so I'll be interested to see what you actually picked.
All right, Michael. And for me, it's economics, but not just the economic data that came out this week, because that makes for the biggest story, but also the stories that can be found within it. First, there was the International Monetary Fund, and it brought its attention to Australia this week. Earlier this year, the IMF had already observed that higher inflation and interest rates would lead to lower global growth of 3.2% this year and 2.9% next year. This week, they forecast economic growth in Australia would drop from 3.7% this year to 1.7% next financial year. They also said that there is only a narrow path for Australia to avoid recession. The IMF also observed again that Australia is one of the highest taxing nations in the world and reiterated calls to overhaul the tax system and keep the stage 3 income tax cuts. Go the IMF. Second, the federal governor of the United States of America, Christopher Waller, came to Sydney with a warning. He told a UBS conference that everybody should take a deep breath after the only slightly better than expected inflation figures in America last week, saying the central bank is far from done rising interest rates, which he said could go up to 6 to 7% in the USA. Now, third, the Australian economic data this week was incredible. The Australian Bureau of Statistics revealed labour data that was well ahead of economists' expectations as our October unemployment rate dropped to 3.4%. That's the equal 48-year record low. Hours worked increased by 2.3%. People are working harder. And September data revealed that private sector wages rose 4.3%. Big changes. Globally and in Australia, expect inflation to remain challenging, interest rates to keep rising, and the impact of that increased cost on everyone amongst the already high cost of living pressure on food, energy, fuel, make this economic data the biggest story of the week.
Wow. There is a lot in that. And
isn't there?
Are we technically allowed to combine 4 stories into one?
I think it falls under the Aylmer qualification.
Yes, Sean Aylmer does that frequently, doesn't he? Just combines as many as he can in just with a kind of a broad grouping in order to give himself the biggest story of the week. So we will allow it.
But will we, Michael? But will we?
That's a very good point. Here I am making rulings and decisions on behalf of the judge when I should just leave it up to the judge. I should not try and interfere with the judiciary. Now, the biggest story of the week for me, your group of stories was big. I had a single standout this week for me, the G20.
Isn't that a group, Michael?
It is technically a group. So allow me to rephrase it. Forget the G20. Specifically one incident, and that is the thawing of the relationship between Australia and our biggest trading partner, China. So in the lead up to the G20, there was a whole lot of kind of will they, won't they over whether Prime Minister Anthony Albanese would meet with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. After all, Australia has been frozen out for something like 3 years now, with the world's second biggest economy maintaining really what you would describe as crippling tariffs on $20 billion worth of Australian exports like coal and wine. And you even had this kind of farcical situation where ministers' calls to their Chinese counterparts were just going completely unanswered. But then it happened, a half-hour sit-down, I think it was 33 minutes, 33 very important minutes, between Xi and Albanese. This is the first meeting between a Prime Minister and the Chinese leader since 2016. And we actually found out a little bit about what was said in there. And Mr. Albanese told President Xi that Australia and China have had their differences, and while we don't resile from our values, it's an important bilateral relationship. All makes sense. For his part, the Chinese leader said that the two countries have had difficulties in recent years, which he doesn't want to see. And the part that I found probably the most interesting was that he said that since Anthony Albanese came to power, that the Australian leader has talked about handling relations in a mature manner, and that President Xi attaches great importance to Mr. Albanese's opinion. So this is a significant thawing in the relationship between the two countries. And it's not just for the hugely important economic impact, which we know is profound, but it's also important for the security situation in our region, which has deteriorated so much in recent years. Obviously, think the ongoing kind of potential crisis over Taiwan, even China's deal with the Solomon Islands. Clearly, this region is going to be the focus of some major geopolitical tension for many years to come. And this week was a major breakthrough in at least re-establishing some normal diplomatic relations between our countries. That is why this was the biggest story of the week, potentially also the month. I'm going to say the quarter. Tim.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Michael. This is a tricky one. Where I'm struggling is, Adam has made a very good case. He's built up his case around the economics, but
built up 4 cases, I think. Yes.
Yeah, that's the question. Is it a group of stories, or is it a super group? It feels like maybe this isn't just the Beatles of stories, but the Live Aid of stories. I do wonder whether maybe we've gone a notch or two far on that, but all important stuff, all around the theme of emerging data from the economy. So I can sort of, see the logic behind it. But also very strong is Michael's case around the China-Australia relationship, which is incredibly important. Now, we can't know at this point whether this actually was the turning point. We'll only know that looking back. But it might have been, it really might have been. And if so, then that will be massively consequential. So I'm going to give this one to Michael.
Excellent. Thank you. I think last week I nearly talked myself out of the victory, so I'm just not going to say anything. All right, let's move on. Let's get to the most remarkable story of the week. Are you okay if I go first on this one, Adam?
Please do.
Okay, so you know how I do tend to look at the big picture, and so I was talking about kind of international relations. Similar kind of theme. I'm looking overseas for most remarkable story, and the massive week for US politics, because this week we have had the results coming through from the midterm elections. In the lead up to the polls, all the talk had been about a red wave of Republican support sweeping through the Senate and the House of Representatives, and a lot of state governor jobs and a whole bunch of other positions as well. And it just didn't happen. The Democrats retained control of the Senate after winning some really key significant races in Arizona and Nevada. The Republicans did win the House of Representatives, and Nancy Pelosi resigned as Speaker. It means there is a return to divided government, and it will see President Joe Biden and the Democrats really having to negotiate now to implement their policy agenda. But the fascinating part and the really remarkable part for me was the response from voters, and women's rights, particularly in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, appears to have been a major issue here. And also that a lot of the candidates handpicked by Donald Trump failed in their bid. And so he was there expecting this red wave to give him a launch pad for his 2024 presidential campaign and just sweep him all the way to the White House. He still launched the campaign this week, but he's launched it into an entirely different environment than he would have been expecting and that it was kind of, say, 2 weeks ago. Even the Murdoch papers have abandoned him. I think Trumpty Dumpty was one of the headlines. One of the standout performers for the Republicans at the midterms was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and many consider him to be a more palatable nominee for the party in the presidential election. It is going to be ugly. It is going to be quite messy and fascinating to watch all of this unfold. Everything about this story is remarkable, and just watching it is quite exciting. Adam.
Yes, Michael. Well done on the story from America. I would just mention that 96% of our audience are in Australia, and that's where my story falls today.
Ooh, hang on, is that the sound of the gloves coming off? I think it was. Please go on.
This story falls right in the middle of the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Egypt, also known as COP27. It's at the nexus of the green energy movement, the height of political tensions, geopolitical drama and increasing power prices, and that has all played out in Australian business this week. AGL is Australia's largest greenhouse gas emitter and owns coal and gas-fired power stations alongside a retail energy division with 4 million customers. Mike Cannon-Brookes controls just 11.28% of AGL, and he wants the power company to move faster to reduce its carbon emissions. So this week, through fierce advocacy and lobbying, Cannon-Brookes was able to skillfully win his battle for control of the AGL board after shareholders voted up all 4 of his proposed directors. Shareholders also approved a plan for AGL to exit coal-fired power generation by 2035. That's 10 years earlier than originally planned, and spend $20 billion adding renewable assets. Cannon-Brookes has urged AGL to get out of coal even earlier by 2030, but this week he has to be happy after using just his 11.28% of the company to gain the appointment of 4 of his chosen directors to the board and the support of shareholders for a much faster transition to green energy. Remarkable. Tim.
Well, hey, look, I think what you make the case very well on is it's a close to home piece of boardroom shenanigans, and it is fascinating that someone who holds such a small stake is going to have such sway over the board now. So that is that's a really nice business story. I guess the question for the US politics question with Michael is has Michael sufficiently joined the dots to the impact on the Australian economy and the working lives of the typical average fear and greed listener? And I think that's maybe where I'm contemplating a little bit, because fun as it is, and I love the New York Post's coverage, just giving a couple of paragraphs to Florida man to stand for presidency in their coverage of Trump.
That was very good.
It was. It definitely signaled a kind of change of the winds. But I think that felt like a foreign story. So I'm going to give this one to Adam.
Well done.
Well
done, Adam.
Thank you, Tim.
I will just say, Tim, that you're becoming more and more like Adam every week, in that you introduced criteria for that category during the judging that weren't actually there before the category actually began.
I think it's a sage-like wisdom. I'm going to be taking it up.
It's what we're used to here. We're used to that happening when Adam is judging. So it feels like you're settling into this role very, very well.
And Michael, aren't you the man of the people?
Yes, but I'm also the man of the American. I'm not. I think globally, Adam.
Your concerns are global.
That's right. That's right. So yes, I'm the man of all people.
Mr. Worldwide.
That's right. Look, hey, if people want to call me that, then that's okay. I will happily embrace it. We are 1-1, Adam. We will come back in a moment and find a sleeper story of the week. Okay, Adam, we are looking for the sleeper story of the week. So this is a story that maybe hasn't had the attention that you think it deserves this week, or is going to become a bigger story further down the track at some point in the future. What was it for you this week?
Well, Michael, as this thrilling contest is now 1-1, My sleeper story of the week is the collapse of Deliveroo, but the potential of more collapses to come. Amongst the transition of technology companies such as Meta, Twitter, and Amazon in recent weeks, we are seeing a big reduction in the expected outlook, higher cost control, and large numbers of redundancies. The food delivery market is a lean margin business, and this week Deliveroo Australia went into administration saying that it cannot maintain its position in the market without a disproportionate level of investment, which would have highly uncertain returns. Deliveroo started here in 2015, growing its network to include more than 12,000 partner restaurants, 15,000 riders and 120 staff. But in recent years, Uber Eats has dominated the market, and rivals Menulog and DoorDash have also overtaken Deliveroo, pushing it into fourth place. So far this year, Deliveroo has also pulled out of the Netherlands and Spain. Amongst the services that remain, there is a big sleeping element about what other food delivery businesses can survive. As has already happened with Deliveroo Australia this week, thousands of restaurants, riders and staff could be affected. Michael.
Look, my sleeper story is it seems a bit odd to suggest that this is a sleeper because it is to do with cryptocurrency. And you would kind of think that crypto has been so high profile. The collapse of the FTX exchange has been very, very public, particularly in the last week. There's been stories about it every day. But there is a sleeper element to this because you've had billions of dollars lost by about 1 million customers, including 30,000 Australians or so. The sleeper part of this story is the potential now for Australia to lead the world, the entire world, in introducing regulations for the sector. The federal government has committed to introducing legislation next year that safeguards cryptocurrency deposits and regulates crypto exchanges. The Treasurer's Office says that the problems with FTX that we've seen over the last week or two really highlight the lack of transparency and the lack of consumer protection in the crypto market. And so they're doing something that they call token mapping, which is essentially just examining the sector. It is a precursor to regulation. Next would come custody regulation, setting out rules for where people's money or tokens are stored, how they can be used, and whose job it actually is to look after them, to keep them secure. Because custody is really the main issue here in the FTX collapse, because that company transferred something like $10 billion worth of money essentially belonging to its customers to another trading business without their knowledge, which would be something regulated under these proposed changes. It is a sleeper story because there is a very good chance that Australia may end up leading the world on these regulations. I think the other country that I think Singapore is also fairly well advanced in terms of regulation, but Australia may end up out in front. And I think that's a really good thing because Australia has a pretty good track record of smart, consumer-focused regulations, and the government is intent on protecting investors while not limiting business innovation, because that is really the point of crypto and the blockchain technology that underpins it, that it is allowing businesses to operate in new and innovative ways. And the regulation needs to kind of walk that line between making sure consumers are protected and that businesses can actually use these technologies to take their growth to the next level. Wouldn't it be great if we here in Australia set a global precedent on this? Tim.
Wow, I think you've both given me the same problem, which is that you've both picked a really excellent, interesting, eyebrow-raising story from the week, and then kind of tried to work out a way of retrofitting it to make it sleeper. So I think what I have to work out is which of the two is more genuinely sleeper. So I love the story Adam chose around the collapse of Deliveroo because it in Australia, because it is clearly it's a significant moment. But whether we can join the dots on, and therefore this is a precursor for what's coming on in the economy, is if not the $1 million question, then the 25-point question. So I will mull on that one for a moment, and then on to Michael. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the regulation arrives. So I think that is the one that there will be definite, genuine developments on. So I'm going to narrowly give that one to Michael.
Fair enough too. Well done, Michael.
Thank you, Adam. And Tim, I like the reference to a 25-point question because, of course, you are kind of giving us points out of 25 for each category. So at the end, we'll be able to find out just how close my victory is. So
you'll be scored with marks out of 100, but
That's right.
At the moment it's very, very tight. If my maths is correct, there's currently only 1 point in it.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
Stand by. Here we go. Hear that? That's my sleeves being rolled up. For the favourite story of the week, I'm going to go first, Adam. Sorry, I'll just
go right ahead.
I'm ready for this because this week is an absolute no-brainer for the favourite story. It shouldn't just be my favourite story. This should be a universal favourite story of the week because it affects the universe. This is all to do with space. Anything to do with space is always going to be the best. This week we saw the launch of the Artemis mission, which has happened now after 2 previous cancellations and a near miss this time as well. They almost weren't able to go ahead with it, but they did. And wasn't it spectacular? It was just incredible. The tremendous amount of power when that rocket blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center, hitting 160 kilometers per hour in seconds vertically. It was just amazing. So the rocket is, once it's kind of up near the moon, it's going to send an empty crew capsule into a wide orbit around the moon. Then the capsule is going to come back to Earth next month and it's going to splash down in the ocean. It is 50 years since the end of the Apollo program. And if Artemis is a success, we could have people back on the moon as early as 2025. The long-term plan, and this is why it's so exciting, the long-term plan is to set up a permanent base camp, really, on the moon, and provide a stepping stone to a crewed Mars mission in the next 20 years to actually send people to Mars. Now, of course, space travel, space exploration is big business. And this program has had years of delays and billions of dollars in cost overruns and features Boeing and Lockheed Martin building the rocket under contract to NASA. Looking ahead as well, there are a lot of commercial opportunities here, including for Australia, because you've got the Australian Space Agency coordinating a number of local businesses developing projects like, would you believe, an Aussie lunar rover, which is similar to designs used for autonomous vehicles in the mining industry. To me, this story has everything. It's got space, it's got rockets, it's got the moon, it's got big business, it's got exploration, and above all, it has hope for the future. Adam.
Wow. It was like I felt Whitney Houston singing a song behind that. That was excellent. Okay, Michael, back here on Earth, if there were any astronauts in the Artemis mission, they would have been able to look back on our beautiful blue Earth and see a population that's now hit 8 billion people.
Oh, well done. Oh, that was poetic.
Thank you. This week, the United Nations released modelling suggesting that on Tuesday, 15 November, the global population reached 8 billion people, and I'm genuinely pleased to be one of them. The level of population change in the last 100 years has been immense, and more population growth has an enormous impact on the opportunities and challenges for businesses around the world. We reached a population worldwide of 2 billion in 1925. In 1960, we got to 3 billion. Since then, we've added another billion people every 10 to 15 years to now reach 8 billion. The population is expected to grow still, peak in the 2080s at about 10.4 billion, plateau for a bit and then start to fall. Now, this population growth comes with its own sets of challenges. As society ages and grows, there are fewer people of working and tax-paying age to pay for the health and retirement needs of an ageing population. We're already seeing it happen in countries like Japan. It also outlines the need for more food and sustainable practices, which are huge business opportunities for Australia. Tim.
Well, I like that one. I find myself wondering though, Adam, why you didn't maybe have that one as your sleeper story and the collapse of Deliveroo as your favourite, because I think you absolutely would have romped. But you didn't make it that way round. So
I put it in the wrong category.
So I can only judge it on what's in front of me, which is, it's still good. I see the business implications.
That sounds like a concession, doesn't it?
It's still good, Adam. You still gave it a crack.
Well done.
Yeah, but maybe I'm misdirecting you. That's a possibility as well, just to build up the excitement. But yeah, 8 billion population. Obviously, that's super significant. Now, we then come on to Michael and space. Now, I do share Michael's love of space. So it was a very significant moment. I was among those tuning in to see the live stream. But did he make the case that it links to business well enough? So, funny enough, there was some misdirection. I have, in fact, given this one to Adam.
It's a dead heat on the story count.
It is a dead heat on the story count.
Contest.
Ooh, okay, so it's going to come down to the points.
It is. Are you curious to know the points?
Extremely.
Desperately so.
Yeah, so Michael has got 84 points out of 100.
Ouch.
And Adam, out of 100, has 85.
Oh, well done, Adam. Goodness me, that was a cracker. God, there was seriously some stories about though this week. There was really good options for all categories. So, really, 1 point difference. That's pretty good. Well done, Adam.
Everyone's a winner.
Oh, goodness me. How very 2022.
Magnanimous.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you very much, Tim.
My pleasure.
That was Tim Burrows, media commentator and the managing partner of newsletter Unmade. Head to unmade.media to sign up. It is a fantastic read. And thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And, of course, don't forget to check out our new podcast, How Do They Afford That?, featuring Canna Campbell, the founder of Sugar Mama TV, all about making your money work a little bit harder for you. This week's episode is all about credit cards. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.